Hello. Today we will talk about giftedness mixed with a bit of ADHD. Now, I have inattentive type, so I do feel it is a bit different than like typical ADHD, but nonetheless. And this is going to focus on emotional intensity. It is a facet, most specifically of giftedness. And I believe it can be exacerbated, is that the word, by the ADD, but it's very common in sort of twice exceptional profiles. Emotional intensity, well, it is really very much backed up by research. Dabrowski talked about overexcitabilities, and these can be intellectual and physical and whatever, but it can also be emotional. And this is an overlap with being highly sensitive. Now, you probably know the concept of high sensitivity by Elaine Aron, and then it's been explored by other people. I do like Judith Orloff's work about being an empath. But anyways, I really wanted to talk about emotional intensity, my experience with it, how it's often perceived really negatively, like this out of control person. It's not at all. It is a depth of emotion, an intensity of emotion, but certainly not an unstable emotion or anything. I think it can happen if you have other problems perhaps, or certain mental health challenges or certain immaturity. Yes, it can be sort of hard to deal with. But I do believe it simply creates a profile of someone that is, well, sensitive. And so to start with, I wanted to define this idea of being sensitive and intense. That it isn't as negative as it sounds at first, right? So sensitivity, it's not that you cry at everything. Not at all. Sensitivity is having a nervous system that responds to stimuli more rapidly. It doesn't need as strong a stimuli as the normal population. And you respond not only emotionally, but also intellectually and physically. So the nervous system, and that accounts for the brain, reaction to a stimuli, let's say it's the same stimuli as someone who's not sensitive, you will have more deep, profound thoughts, more deep emotional reasoning than the other person that doesn't have that same sort of wiring. So yes, it often makes you more deep, this sensitivity. In a way, more reactive. You will look more reactive, but you simply have less of a threshold to things that can create negative emotions. So you might get angry quickly because you see in a very banal, perhaps, or benign looking event, the evil that is rooted behind it. And so you'll have this self-righteous anger perhaps that pops up, because I'll go to intensity. Intensity is having that stronger response. You may have an outlook on life that feels intense, but that is in the eyes of others or the norm. Intensity simply is that it's rare that you will feel nothing. It's rare that you will be this chill, relaxed person that doesn't see something as deep or important. To you, everything will be pretty much important. Everything will merit deep thought and reflection. Most things will make you emotional and have an emotional reaction. You are not someone who is here to simply just be and not reflect. We need people like that, a lot of people like that, to get things going, right? I do believe that sensitive, intense person in the past would have been the shamans, or perhaps the ones that leave in are the trackers, would have been the ones that reflect about the future and the consequences of action, would have been perhaps like the witch in the woods, or the wise person in the hut that people would come and visit to have some sort of counsel or wisdom. So it really isn't a negative thing. It simply creates a difference because we can be overstimulated more quickly than most people. We can be overwhelmed more quickly because let's say you have that one event, it will trigger all these thoughts and this questioning and these emotions, and so you need time to process all these reactions within you. Whereas another person have that same event, it didn't create anything really. They just did that event, it's done, I'll move on to the next. So they can have all these events because it doesn't really trigger those reactions as it does for someone who's sensitive and intense. So often will adopt the role of people who honestly nurture and gain wisdom. If we do it well. But it is something that we can be really good at. Truly understanding a problem, going deeper, seeing the root causes of things. That can definitely be a role. And I also think it makes us really good with people. Because it's really difficult to explain, but we can, even with strangers, quickly understand their emotions, their emotional state, how they are feeling. And it can be badly received. I know that is something that I go through with my relationships, where it is very clear to me what someone is feeling and why they are feeling a certain way. And when I try and bring him forward, meaning I try to get the other person to admit to those feelings, go within those feelings, reflect upon these feelings in order to have some sort of answer or gaining of consciousness, it often comes with resistance and defensiveness. And that is totally okay, because it feels a bit as if you're seeing something you're not supposed to be seeing. So I think it's more like the context. Where do you use it, right? It can be a little bit of a challenge in intimate relationships, because sometimes you have to keep those things to yourself out of respect for the other person's boundaries and their desire to face that or not, right? So you can't really force someone to go into that deep reflection state, which is your natural state all the time, I mean, it's differences that we have to respect, and they're probably much more productive and active and fun and things like that than you are. We're going to say that, right? So it's a thing of context, but I think that, let's say in a professional setting or at work, it can be really, really useful when you have to deal with people, with perhaps like your colleagues are going through a rough time and they need someone, or perhaps when you actually have a role where you have to sort of guide and coach and help other people go through those emotions. I think that can be really, really beneficial. Your understanding of other people's emotional state and your ability to put it into words and to clarify it in a way that perhaps they are not used to. So that's definitely something that I notice. Then I would say that as a person, it can create this natural moral stance. So I've read a lot that sensitive, intense people are very moral and very affected by the idea of justice. I think that there is this radar of right and wrong when you are actually in desire of doing something that's right or wrong. I think that when you have an emotional reaction that's bigger, you will truly feel a bad act, an immoral act. You will truly feel it. And so it does perhaps lead you towards the more right, moral, noble acts, simply because you don't want to feel that negative emotions. You understand that it triggers negative emotions, whereas other people can do immoral things and it doesn't really trigger that much thought or that much emotion, so they go on being immoral. I think that's where this stark sense of morality can come from in sensitive and intense people, right? And I believe that is something really positive. It can make you intense, because then when the people around you are confronted with that high morality, that high sense of justice and ethics that you have, what is right and what is wrong, not only in terms of how they're treating other people, but also how they're leading their lives, and that can depend. It will feel intense to someone else who just does not see life that way, does not see life in any sort of deep, reflective way, which is totally normal, and again, very important. I'm not saying they're more or less. All I'm trying to do right now is show the positive aspects of being sensitive and tense and the role that we can play. But yes, it will make it so that we sort of can become little lights, little lamps in the world, trying to guide people towards something that's better. Like in the tarot, for example, I could think about like the high priestess, I could think about the priest, but the priest often has a more rigid intellectual formula, so I wouldn't necessarily go there. More like the hermit. The hermit in the tarot, this old sage with his lamp in the dark in the winter. I think that can definitely be a beautiful role that we can embody in other people's lives and maybe at work. And so, okay, 9 minutes. I think I'm going to stop that there just for this video. I think it's long enough. I've told about what my experience has been and what I think can be positive. I think we can all know the downside. I've talked about it a bit, but of course it can create like stronger negative reactions, perhaps a propensity for anxiety and depression. So we do need to understand emotions at a fairly young age to grow in maturity. We have to grow more quickly and more seriously to actually make sure that this sensitivity turns positive instead of dark, because it does have a big propensity for darkness, like it can do. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but anyway. So I'm going to stop now. I'm going to stop rambling. But these are my thoughts on sensitivity and intensity. I do not believe it is bad at all. Like, I am very loved. I have good relationships. I am a normal functioning adult, and yet I'm still sensitive and intense. So I wanted to bring this outlook today. If you have anything you want to share, like questions or perhaps your own experience of being sensitive and intense, or perhaps having a partner that's sensitive and intense, I think it can be great. For me, I like reading it when there's like tips or something intelligent, or perhaps for other people who sort of are looking for a bit of wisdom and connection. So, thank you for watching. Have a great week again, and I'll see you soon, I hope. Bye.